Wes Blankenship and Jake Rowe at the SEC Championship game. Jake, the Dogs ended their drought, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
2017, is that a drought?
A little bit of one. When you've lost 3 in a row.
It feels like a lot longer than that, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And, I mean, it's only the 4th in school history, right? So it's not – they don't come along every day. First time in school history, Georgia's 13-0. And, 50-30, gave up more points than I think you would have thought that Georgia would have given up, scored more points than you would have thought Georgia would have scored. And I think they did everything everybody kind of expected them to do to LSU, just like I said, maybe a few more points. 80 total, that's pretty crazy.
So, obviously, a lot to celebrate. We heard from the players after the game. I'll say, though, the blocked field goal touchdown that Chris Smith had was one of the strangest plays I've ever seen in a Georgia game. I think about the Isaac Nada pick up the fumble
Against
from
Tennessee.
Jake Fromm against Tennessee, and that Chris Smith blocked field goal touchdown return. That was weird, man.
It was preparedness. Kirby and Chris Smith both talked about after that game how they kind of look at that every other week or, so often during the season, and they go over kind of what happens when there's a field goal rolling around out there. In the national championship game, Georgia blocked a field goal, and Kirby talked about how, I think it was Quay Walker, he said almost completely messed it up in that game. So that was actually a really huge play and something that Georgia was prepared to handle. One thing I'll say, there were a couple of fortuitous plays there early in the game. I think Wes would agree with that. That block kick is one of them, but Georgia made that happen with the block kick, made the recovery and the return happen. The Smile Munden play.
Pick?
Yeah, the Smile Munden play. I mean, listen, that's not like a lineman getting pushed or a quarterback slipping. That's somebody breaking up a pass and the ball being kept alive and him making a play. Georgia scores on the very next one with the touchdown to Ladd McConkey. So Georgia did a lot of really good things today. Did some bad things too. And listen, you like that if you're a coach so that you've got something to really work on, going into what will be an extended practice type deal. Georgia's going to have some spring practices coming up. They're going to have some preseason camp practices where they'll give the players a rest and then they'll start back at the basics. And
is it more similar to like a bye week or to a spring practice, fall practice?
Yeah, more like a bye week, I'd say. Probably, it's probably a little bit of elements of both. I mean, they'll get a couple of extra days on preparing for whoever the playoff opponent is. But out of the bowl practices, out of all of the bowl practices, probably more of them will be, fundamental-based practices than will be preparation practices for Ohio State or TCU or Alabama or whoever it is.
So after the game, got a lot of video of the players on the field celebrating, rightfully so. They were pumped. They were fired up. I told Stetson Bennett that I'd see him in New York. Now, I don't know if I'm personally going to New York or if we're going. I'm not going to put you on the spot with that. But I think Stetson's going.
He may. I've got a Heisman vote. I may have included Stetson in my Heisman. You're not supposed to say what you're doing. But I may have included Stetson on my Heisman ballot.
I told Jake to vote for Dan Jackson.
Yeah, Dan Jackson.
He didn't do it.
I didn't do it. But incredible game from Stetson Bennett. A game that I felt like he needed in this building after last year. Another MVP thing. This is his third. He's played in 4, I think, championship games as a starting quarterback. He now has an MVP in all of them, which I think is pretty incredible. 4 postseason games, and now has an MVP in all of them. He didn't win one. He has one in the SEC championship, 1 out of 2 chances there. But he's won an SEC championship game MVP, Orange Bowl MVP, college football playoff MVP, and put together a heck of a season. Over 3,400 yards passing, 27 total touchdowns now.
Speaking of MVPs, we want to shout out our people at BreakingT.com. I'm sure they'll have something cooked up for the SEC championship with the Dogs taking home their first title since 2017 and their 4th ever. Jake, the theme as I spoke to a lot of the players was, yeah, we're happy, we're pumped up, we got some sweet new T-shirts ourselves, but we have 2 more games they want to win, is what they said.
2-game season.
That's what they said. They said, this is cool, we got 2 more.
I started this season, and I remember talking to a colleague, and I said, feels like a Sugar Bowl year. Georgia lost a lot, man. They lost a lot. And, we talked, Wes, after that Oregon game, and I was like, man, I don't know, maybe I was shortchanging this team, and I think I was. And here you are, a year after winning the national title, when so many Georgia fans said, I'm going to be good for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years. Georgia's on the cusp of doing it and doing it better. And that's pretty incredible. And, you know, I guess, Wes, I don't know what you're going to get to next, but something I want to get to before we forget about it is the
There's
injury
a lot
situation.
to get to. Yeah,
is obviously the injury situation.
So what'd you hear from Kirby after the game about that?
Kirby says Warren McClendon, which I think is probably the if you're triaging these injuries, is probably the less influential of the two. Even though he's a really good player, Marius Mims is a good understudy there at that right tackle position. Well, the good news is Kirby Smart says it's a light MCL. He had the same thing to say about a Marius Mims injury, which was suffered against Florida, and Marius Mims missed 1 game. So that was pretty big. I think Warren McClendon should be fine based on what we know about that injury. Lab McConkey, a little bit of mixed information. You know, I hear he kind of injured it. There may be a procedure involved. I'm not 100% sure if it is. It'll be a basic cleanup. He'll have, 3 full weeks to get ready. If that's not what's going on, Kirby Smart said after the game, he said it was kind of a culmination of things, that he's been dealing with tendonitis and a sore knee, basically, and he kind of re-aggravated and couldn't go back in the game. So we'll see how that kind of works out. But as of right now, it wouldn't shock me if there was a little bit more to that. But I do think there's still a very good chance, based on what we've heard, that he'll be back in there. And we also got to see A.D. Mitchell. We didn't get to see him catch a pass, but we got to see him throw one.
We have all the press conferences from the SEC Championship game up on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe on DawgsHQ and watch all of those. We even have Brian Kelly and his reactions. This wasn't your typical Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly matchup that we've seen between Notre Dame and Georgia throughout the years, Jake. Let's talk about A.D. Mitchell, though, and that 2-point conversion. Had a little bit of a mixed reaction. A lot of Georgia fans loved it, obviously, but we've already gotten some comments. Someone found a Todd Monken video that we uploaded in the summer and said, how can you be so classless to go for 2 and put 50 on the board when you have the game firmly in control? What was that all about tonight?
Kirby said it was just them going by the book, that their book had it 25. If you're sitting at 25, you go for 2. I think they wanted to put something on film for an opposing team to have to worry about, whether it was for a 2-point conversion or whether it was a red zone trip or whatever. I think they're just trying to make somebody work on something of some sort. But that's just me. We'll see if Georgia has anything to counter off of it. I feel odd that 25-point game, you're going to pull out a 2-point conversion, a tricky 2-point conversion.
And even if you're putting something on film, don't you want to hide those trick plays and not give them away?
Sometimes you'll put something like that on film to get them to work on it, and then you'll have a little something off of it. Like maybe you run that little end around play, and AD kind of comes out and then flips it back to Bennett, who throws to the other side of the field, or you do a little something different off of it to kind of cross them up. And I mean, I can't imagine it was for any other reason. I don't think digging into the bag of tricks to go up 27 points is a big deal personally, but whatever.
I don't think Kirby has anything personal against Brian Kelly. Maybe if it was Dan Mullen on the other sideline, I could see that being the case. But yeah, that was a pretty nifty play call. Let's talk about the other number 5 though, Jake. Obviously there's a lot to celebrate, a lot of confetti on this field still, even as they're vacuuming it all up or whatever they're doing. The Zamboni's doing this job down there. I don't know why they do that, but they kind of shampoo the turf. What was up with Keely Ringo tonight?
Well, okay. First of all, I would probably say I have more of an issue with Malachi Starks from tonight, because a couple of those really big plays, he misjudged a pass. He got caught out of position on a pass. One of them was a touchdown. Malachi Starks had a really tough game. He had a really good one last time we played in this building, had a tough one today. Keely Ringo had a tough day too. Pass interference penalty. He got beat on a couple of shorter routes. He was in the picture on some of those longer plays, but if you understand the technique he was playing, one time he was in zone playing underneath coverage and Malachi Starks didn't get over. The other time he was playing trail technique and Malachi Starks let the guy run right by him. Either way, Ringo's tackling was a bigger issue to me, and panicking with the ball in the air. He also made a couple of really nice plays today too. I think Georgia fans, I think teams are going after Keely Ringo because they know they can get some of the easy stuff off of him. It's a little tougher to challenge him downfield because he will kind of get in that receiver's hip pocket and make a play on the ball. But they're going after him on the short stuff and then kind of going after him on a short condensed area because he is a bigger body. And sometimes you can kind of draw contact in those situations. He's got to do a better job of not panicking with the ball in the air. But I'm not worried about Keely Ringo. I mean, he shows up in big games.
A couple other things I want to highlight. Jalen Carter had that awesome photo-worthy almost body slam of Jaden Daniels, but he was merciful to the Bayou Bengals quarterback, who, by the way, is tougher than Rooster Lips, is what I tweeted
tougher
tonight.
Than Rooster Lips.
But other than that, something else I saw, we were talking about LSU's offensive line this week, about how they've given up a lot of sacks. They've been kind of porous at times. I thought they brought a pretty tough attack to Georgia's front seven tonight.
Yeah, they gave the quarterback some time. Now I will say this too. I think Georgia affected the quarterback, but they let him get the ball out.
I'm not saying Georgia didn't get to him,
but they just they gave him a good chance to get the ball out, especially early. Georgia came up some sacks late, and Nussmeier came in not as mobile. They did a really good job of kind of allowing him to, I tell you what, man, when Nussmeier came in the second half, they started uncorking it. I mean, they were just slinging it. And it ball wasn't always accurate, and it wasn't. I don't know if it was always throwing it to the right guy, but they were just like, "Hey, we're going to go," and it worked out for them. It worked out for them, and you see a lot of times. I want folks to remember this game, because there are a lot of times where Georgia will win 27-3 or 33-0 over Samford or whatever, and it's just not enough. But you don't hear people griping when they score 50 and give up 30.
Give up 30, yeah.
Maybe they're just tired of it being one way and they're glad to see it be another. But LSU scores 30 on Georgia night, which kind of sucks for Georgia, but ultimately,
season high.
Yeah, season high. But ultimately, just a massive win, and Georgia will be back in this place in about 4 weeks.
Let's get to that. I know that the Dogs out there want to celebrate the SEC championship. There's certainly a lot to celebrate. A lot of coverage at DawgsHQ.com of tonight's game. But as we look ahead to Selection Sunday, a lot up in the air, depending on what the committee wants to do, specifically with TCU and Ohio State. And you and me and Palmer kind of went back and forth on this before the game as we watched TCU give that one away. Had a shot on the goal line, couldn't seal the deal. They lost the conference championship game. But I've spoken with some other people tonight, and they seem to think like, even though TCU lost, there's no chance that Bama gets in. And I'm sorry for all the Bama fans that may be watching this right now. That seems like a long shot. But how important is avoiding a Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the semifinal if they want to put Ohio State at 3 and TCU at 4?
I think it should be a big deal. I really do. I mean, I think Ohio State needs to be 4. They've got one less win than TCU. They didn't make it their conference championship. They got bullied the last time they were on the field. Let's see Georgia versus Ohio State. Because, one thing I'm really tired of hearing about, and I saw it written about in The Athletic the other day, and I think it was by Ari Wasserman, who I love his stuff, but I disagree with him on this. Georgia's not scared of Ohio State. Now, Ohio State may come into this building in 4 weeks, and it may knock off Georgia. Okay, but Georgia's not scared of Ohio State. Georgia's played Tennessee. Georgia's played some really good football teams. Georgia's played some really high-octane offenses. It's going to be fine. I've been all over Ohio State's defense this year. At one point, they had played 5 or 6 teams outside of the top 100 in the nation, and 7 outside the top 90. And their average defense was 71 or something like that. And everybody was talking about how great their defense was. Well, Michigan exposed it. We've seen how Ohio State responds to teams that play like Georgia and Michigan do. I'm interested to see that happen. Bring them on. Let's play that game. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm not guaranteeing that Georgia wins it. I think Georgia matches up well. I know Georgia's not scared to play it. If they come out here like Wes and I were talking before it starts, I said, hey, Georgia plays well, they'll win. If they don't, they'll lose. And Wes says, all right, the show's over.
That's all we need.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah, we're just going to cut it here. I do want to say one more thing, Jake, before we wrap up. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, they were the guys that Georgia fans wanted to see all year in this game. And at times it almost feels like Todd Monken does everything he can with the offense just to see what he can do without using the Brock Bowers cheat code. But tonight he had the Brock Bowers cheat code and the Darnell Washington cheat code at his disposal. And Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton and Dejon Edwards also looking unstoppable. I don't know what that says about LSU's defense, but I do know that whoever plays Georgia in the semifinal is going to have a tough time stopping all those weapons. I don't know if you had anything else to say about
man,
that.
that's 100% on point. I was watching this dude stuff this net into this barrel.
Yeah,
That's what happens when you're field goal, man.
this is like the Trader Joe's cashier stuffing all 8 gallons of milk you have into one brown paper bag. And that's a very specific reference, but it is a sight to behold, and it's also a sign that we need to get the hell out of here, Jake.
I'm tired.
It's, what do you say? The Sandman's coming?
The Sandman's coming.
All right. For Jake Palmer Toms, who's up
there somewhere writing something, I think.
This is the DawgsHQ SEC Championship game post-game report. Subscribe for $10 right now. What a deal. We'll be back. Georgia wants 2 more games. I think we might see them.